This is Masachet Pirkei Avot Perek Bet Mishnah Chet Tet Yud Aleph Yud Bet and Yud Gimel. We stopped in Mishnah Zion with a statement of Hillel. Before that, also we had some statements of Hillel, and now the Mishnah will continue with one of his students, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So the Mishnah says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Kibel and Hillel Shammai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai received his traditions from Hillel and Shammai. This is why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is now right smack in the middle of the second parak. Hu haya omer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai used to say, Im lamadta Torah harbe al tachzik tova la'atzmecha ki lakach natzarta. If one has learned a lot of Torah, one should not tachzik tova la'atzmecha, which means to have be satisfied with what he's done or say he's done great for himself, because this is why you were created. Now, this statement has generally been understood in two ways. One way it's understood is, if you've learned a lot of Torah, you shouldn't, and you've been successful and you've learned a lot, you shouldn't say, I'm done, I'm a great person, I've done such great things, and feel fulfilled, because this is why you're created. It's your duty to do this. If you're a worker and you're paid to build a building, paid to build something, it's a building and you build it, so this was your job. So, you could feel satisfaction doing it, but you shouldn't, say, I'm done and feel satisfied, because this is what you were there to do. Another explanation is that im lamanat Torah harbe, if you've learned a lot of Torah, al tachzik tova la'atzmecha. You shouldn't say, I've done it, I'm wonderful, be so proud of yourself, even maybe I'm better than other people, that you've had such success learning Torah, because lakach natzarta, because this is how God created you. God made you this way. He gave you these abilities, and that's why you've had success. So rather, a person should have humility in all their accomplishments, especially with Torah study, because his successes come from the fact that he was made in this way. God made him this way. The Mishnah continues, Chamisha Talmidim Hayil Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai ve'ilu hein. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had 5 students. Now, obviously, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had much more than 5 students, but these were his 5 prime students. These were his most prolific students. Ve'ilu hein, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus, Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, Rabbi Yossi HaKohen, Shimon ben Netanel, Rabbi Elazar ben Arach. And these are some of the most famous statements from the Gemara: Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar. Hu haya mona shivchan. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai would often count, literally means count their praises, but he would talk about and praise them for all the things they've done. Now, there's some commentators say that the things he would praise them for is things that not talents that God gave them, but rather things they had to work on to be phenomenal. So also, on one hand, he was pointing out, like, he noticed all their accomplishments and how hard they had to work, which is very, interesting idea that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had so many students, and he was still able to realize and have individualized praise for his students. So this is what he used to say. Rabbi Elazar ben Hyrcanus bor sod she'eino ma'abei tipa. Rabbi Elazar ben Hyrcanus was a cistern made of plaster that never lost a drop, meaning he had such incredible retention that he never forgot anything. So if a person has a photographic memory, you're not exactly praised for that. So some commentators say that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying Rabbi Elazar ben Hyrcanus was such an incredible memory, and he never forgot anything because he worked so hard at reviewing constantly so that he wouldn't forget. That's what he was praising. That's what Rabbi Yochanan was praising. It was not necessarily his ability to retain so much information, but his work ethic in order to retain this information. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania, Ashrei Yoladato. Rabbi Yeshua ben Hanania used to say, praiseworthy is the woman who gave birth to him. So what does this mean? That people used to look at him and say, wow, he's such an incredible person, his mother should be blessed. So some of the commentators again explain that what this means is that he had such great character traits, and he's such an amazing person, and usually it's your mother who's raising you who instills these traits in you, so people would look at him and say, wow, what amazing traits he has, impeccable character, that his mother must have raised him in an incredible way. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen Chassid. Rabbi Yossi HaKohen was extremely pious in his actions and scrupulous with his mitzvot. He did more than just the letter of the law. Shimon ben Netanel Yirachet. Rav Shimon ben Netana was exceedingly conscious of doing things that would lead to sin. He would avoid any situation that could possibly lead to sins, and he would always be careful of his actions. Rav Elazar ben Arach, Ma'ayan HaMitgaber. And Rav Elazar ben Arach was a Ma'ayan HaMitgaber. He was a spring that overflowed and got stronger and stronger. So some commentators explain, what does it mean, Ma'ayan HaMitgaber? He wasn't just a Ma'ayan, a spring that never stops flowing, but he was a Ma'ayan HaMitgaber that as it kept going on, when most people would tire, he would not tire. He would get stronger, and he would be able to explain more and have more creative thought. That's what Ma'ayan HaMitgaber means. It's someone who's creative and able to add to learning with more and more ideas. Then the Mishnah continues that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, Hu haya omer im hayu kol Yisrael b'kaf moznayim. All the rabbis, the sages, were on one side of a scale. A kaf moznayim is a scale. So you have to imagine a scale having two spoons or two cups to weigh it. So one side of the scale were all the rabbis of Israel. Rav Elazar ben Aruch b'kaf shniya machriyat kulam. And Rav Elazar ben Horkinus, the sage earlier, who was said he never forgot his studies over here. He never forgot his studies. If he was on the other side, he would weigh them, he would equal them or outweigh them. Abba Sholom or Mishmo, Abba Shol used to say in the name of Yochanan ben Zakkai, Im hayu kol Yisrael b'kaf moznayim, Rav Elazar ben Horkinus afi mahem. If all the rabbis were on one side, even Rav Elazar ben Horkinus, the one who never forgot anything, Rav Elazar ben Aruch b'kaf shniya machriya kulam. And Rav Elazar ben Aruch, the Ma'ayan HaMitgaber from before, was on the other side. He would outweigh them all. So, but this is not a contradiction of statements. Two statements made in the name of Yochanan ben Zakkai that either Rav Elazar ben Horkinus would outweigh all the rabbis, or Rav Elazar ben Aruch would outweigh everyone. Rather, what this is, he's talking about two different skill sets. If all the rabbis in the Torah were put on a scale against Rav Elazar ben Horkinus, he would outweigh them with the amount of information he was able to have in his back pocket, so to say, his retention. But Rav Elazar ben Horkinus was on the opposite scale of all the rabbis. He would be able to have more creative ideas and thought. So that's the end of Mishnah Chet. Mishnah 10. Amar Lahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his students, Se'u uru'u ezo derech yishar sheyidbak b'adam. Go out and look. Well, it's not actually go out and look. Some commentators say it might actually be, he actually would say to them, go to the world and look around and do some studies to figure out what you think is true. But most people say it's se'uru, means just like, it's figuratively, one should think about intellectually. What was his question? Ezo derech yishara sheyadbik b'ha'adam. What is the correct path that a person should stick to cling to? What should a person work on his whole life? What's the most important things for personal growth? So Rabbi Eliezer from above said ayin tova. Rabbi Eliezer said an ayin tova, which is a good eye, which means you should be satisfied with what you have, not be jealousy towards other people. Rabbi Yeshua Omer chaver tov. What he said, you should be a good friend. These are, it's a question of what it means. You should have good friends, or you should be a good friend. We'll go with the assumption it means you should be a good friend. Being a good friend to help someone out whenever they need you, help people grow spiritually, help people in this time of need. Rabbi Yossi said it's not a friend that's most important, rather a shachin, a neighbor. Being a good neighbor is more important, because while friends are important, neighbors are always live next to you, and they have the most influence on you because you're always looking at them. Friends, you don't always see them in their setting, but a neighbor is always there. So that's the question: what's more important, having good friends or good neighbors? Rabbi Shimon said, "Roa etzanola." If someone should see the consequences of their actions, reward versus short-term reward versus long-term reward. Like if you get food at 3, a big barbecue at 1 o'clock in the morning. So short-term reward is going to taste really good now, but long-term reward you'll be sick, from the effects of the food. So that's what he says. Roa tanola, you should see the consequences. And Rabbi Elazar says, Leiv tov, a good heart. So what does a good heart mean? So this is a big question in those commentaries. What does it mean? But more generally, it means people should have general actions that are always driving good. You show with your heart should be in the good place when you do things. Some people say it's more specific, and it means you should not get angry and always be patient. Leiv Tov means you're calm and sedate, and you never get high-strung or high-tempered. So Amar lehem ro'ani et divrei Rav Elazar ben Aruch mitvarechem shebekal dvarav dvarechem. So Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai said, I see the words of Rav Elazar ben Aruch better than all of yours, because within his words are everything you said. Meaning, if a person doesn't get angry, he'll be a good neighbor. He won't be jealous of other people. He'll see the consequences of his action. So that's why a leiv tov, not getting angry or just having, being kind, is the most important. So now Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai asks the flip side. Amar lehem tz'uru ezu derech ra'ash yitrachek mimen adam. What is the correct path that a person should stay away? What is the worst path, the bad path, the evil path that a person should distance themselves from? Rabbi Elazar Omer Ayin Ra. Rabbi Elazar said, which is the flip side of what he said earlier, an evil eye, meaning you should look jealously on other people's property. You look down on other people. That's what it means, like a downcast eye. Rabbi Yeshua Omer being a chavara, a bad friend. Rabbi Yossi said shachein ra, a bad neighbor, and most commentators say it doesn't mean just to be not helpful. It means to actually influence people to do bad, or don't give them encouragement when they need it, and actually give them the wrong advice. And Rabbi Shimon Omer halova ve'eno mishalim. Rabbi Shimon said it's someone who takes out a loan from someone and doesn't pay them back. So the question is, this isn't exactly match up, because before we saw Rabbi Shimon said roa et hanolad is the good attribute, someone who sees his actions and predicts the future, determines the outcome. That's the good trait. And the negative trait is lo v'veino mashal, someone who takes out a loan and can't pay it back. So most commentators explain the reason for this dichotomy, or not matching up, is because of the fact that just because someone isn't smart enough to see the consequences of his actions, the long-term consequences, and we're not talking the short-term consequences, we're talking long-term consequences, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you're naive to some of your actions. So that's not bad. It doesn't necessarily inherently bad. So Rabbi Shimon picks a specific concept that is bad if you don't pay it back. Someone who takes out a loan and can't pay it back, or knows and takes out a loan knowing he can't pay it back, this is a very bad trait. And the Mishnah continues, why? Echad alova min adam, someone who borrows from a person, kilova min makom baruchu. It's as if he is borrowing from Hashem. What does that mean? Why? Shenemar, as it says in Tehillim, in Psalms, lova rasha v'lo yishalim v'tzadik chonein v'notein. Someone who lova rasha v'lo yishalim, someone who borrows, a lova rasha, a borrower who's evil, is someone who doesn't pay back. V'tzadik chonein dat, and the righteous one, chonein v'notein, he is kind and compassionate and gives. So what is that referring to? That's actually referring to Hashem. That Hashem will pay back somehow. He'll arrange that the borrower, the lender who gave the money and now can't get his money back because the borrower can't pay him. So this person, he will get paid back by Hashem. So it's as if the borrower who can't pay back, the lova rasha, who can't pay back his friend, but now owes the money to God. So someone who borrows money and doesn't pay back, and his lender, in a sense, is now Hashem and not paying back. It's like as if you're taking a loan from God and not paying him back. Rabbi Elazar Omer leiv tov, leiv ra. Rabbi Elazar said, what is the worst path a person can take? A leiv ra. So again, while some commentators say it's very general, it means having an evil heart and not doing things nicely, some commentators say it's more specific and refers to getting angry. And he says getting angry is the worst attribute a person can have. Amar lehem ro'ani et divrei Rav Elazar mitvarechem shebechal dvarav mitvarechem. So Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai concludes this quest he sent the students on to find out what's the proper path. He says, I find that getting angry is the worst of all the attributes, because within that attribute of getting angry, all the other ones are in it. That's how he concludes his Mishnah. The Mishnah will continue now with statements of his students. So, Haim Amru Shlosha Sbarim. They, his students, each said three things. So now sometimes the three are going to be very clear, and other times they're not going to be so clear. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yehei kvod chavercha chaviv alecha kishacha v'al ti'anoach lichos v'shuv yom echad lefnei mitatech. So these are three things, and most commentators say these are the three things. And there's another sense after which is different. So he said, Yehei kavod chavercha chaviv alecha kishacha. The honor of your friend should be beloved to you like it's your own honor. Which means what? Which means you should care about your friend's honor and respect to your friend as much as it's your own respect, and you want him to get honor for things he does, and you should protect his honor and make sure he gets the honor he deserves. Number two, altia noach lichos. A person should be very noach lichos. Noach means like menucha is rest or calmness. Lichos is anger, so they're two opposites. So saying a person should be very slow to anger. And lastly, v'shud yom echad lefnei mitatech. You should do tshuva one day before you die. And the commentators say, quoting from other sources, what does this mean? You should do tshuva one day before you die. How do you know the day you die? Rather, what it's saying is you should constantly be doing tshuva because you never know the day you're going to die. And then he concludes, you should become warmed from the fire. So this is like an analogy that the words of the rabbis are like fire, and they can warm you up. You should be warmed from the fire by spending time with them and learning from them. However, while that's a positive, because of their fire, you should be careful not to get burnt from their fire. What does that mean? So you should stay close to rabbis because they can help you and they can give you a lot of advice and sage advice and help guide you, but you should be careful to show them the right amount of respect, because through familiarity of being close to someone, a lot of times those boundaries can fall apart. And if those boundaries fall apart, so you can get burnt by not showing the proper respect. And what happens if you don't show a rabbi proper respect, whether arguing with him or contradicting him? So it says there are three things that could happen. One is actions. Neshichatan, neshichat shel. A rabbi can take action against you, and his bite is like the bite of a fox, and foxes have very painful bites because they have a lot of teeth that are jagged and can hurt you. Akitzatan, akitat akrave. Their sting is like the sting of a scorpion. Well, again, the sting doesn't penetrate the skin as much of a bite, but it's deadly with just a little venom. V'lechishatam lechishat saraf. And their hiss is like the hiss of a snake, and hissing is not even an action at all, it's just speaking. So sometimes, if you disrespect the rabbis have at their means these mechanisms to defend their honor and the honor of the sages, and they can take action against you, whether it's full action or partial action or just speak against you, and then it concludes, V'chol dvareim kigach ha'leish, and all of their words are like fire. So again, we said before that there are three things he said. So what are the three? So we gave the standard explanation that the rabbis give, that the three things are Yehek kavod chavercha chaviv alecha kishacha v'al ti'anoach lichos is 1 and 2 v'shuv yom echad lefnei mitatech. So some commentators say that really the first two, Yehek kavod chavercha chaviv alecha kishacha v'al ti'anoach lichos, is really one, that your friend's honor should be very important to you. And how does one do that? By never becoming angry with them. That if you really care about someone's honor, you'll always be even-headed when dealing with them. And then the second maxim he said was Shuv yom echad lefnei mitatech. Make sure to do tshuva before you die. And the last one is you should treat the rabbis with a lot of respect. We're out of time, but next session we'll have on Mishnah Yud Aleph, Yud Bet, Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet, Tet Vav, and Tet Zayin.